Good afternoon, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to share a stock which I'm going to be observing the earnings of, and that's Edwards Lifesciences. In this video, I'll share the exact science I'm looking out for, the bias I have inside of Edwards Lifescience, and why I'm using earnings as the volatility catalyst as our means to try and play this overall move. Now to start off, this video is being recorded on a Sunday, April 23rd, and earnings is on April 26th, so 3 days away from today. Now, as of this most previous week, the close on Friday, we've seen the market pulse has now turned green. The market pulse is this line that you see on our charts here. It's a very simple way to gather what the trend is. It prints one of three colors, either red if the trend is down, green, which is what it's now printing if the trend is up, or gray if we don't really have a bias, concrete bias one way or the other. Now here we're seeing the market pulse is green, suggesting we've switched to a stage of acceleration. If you're unfamiliar with the market pulse and the 4 different market stages, I'll leave a link to that in the description box below. The main thing to take away from this chart, the market pulse line here has been red ever since about February of 2022, and for the first time here in April of 2023, we're seeing that trend switch. So there's a reason why I think particular attention should be paid to Edwards Lifesciences and why this earnings cycle may be a very helpful catalyst. Now with the bullish bias behind us, if I zoom out, there's a few things to be cautious of here as well. The first is this very clear resistance where price seems to be slamming back into. You could argue this is simply just a bear flag in what is otherwise still a bear trend, and we're coming back into previous resistance. The daily time frame chart supports this idea even more with these 3 candle wicks that we've been seeing. Buyers have had a tough time getting price above that 87 mark, and if I zoom out here, you can also see we filled this gap. We're starting to hit pause where we're seeing that resistance. It would make more sense here if you're just looking at the charts to have at least a small pullback before resuming this rally. Now we also have, again, as I mentioned, earnings coming up here, so let's try and gather some information around what earnings is likely to give us. To do so, I'm going to use our earnings tool. Specifically in this video, I'll be using our post-earnings analysis indicator, and for all Volatility Box members, this is included for free with your Volatility Box membership. You can download this indicator for free on our website, tosindicators.com/earnings. Now let me load that indicator on my chart, post earnings. I'll click apply, and we're starting with understanding what tends to happen inside of Edwards Lifesciences 7 days after its reported earnings. So if I click OK and apply, 7 days after earnings, we typically tend to see price rise about 60% of the time. We see price fall about 40% of the time. More or less, the two averages are even, so call it a plus or minus 3.8% move that tends to take place after Edwards Lifesciences has reported earnings. Now let's test a few different numbers here to get a sense of what tends to happen, say, immediately after earnings, maybe that midway point, and then we'll give something like, say, a 30-day post-earnings period to understand what happens really a month after earnings is behind us. So let's test it 3 days next. 3 days, we see something similar, 60% rise, 40% fall, but on average, we're seeing that number is about plus or minus 2.2%, a little bit less compared to 7 days, and we would expect that. That makes a lot of logical sense here. Now what happens if we expand this to something like, say, 15 days? Click apply. 15 days after earnings, we can see price tends to rise about 55% of the time, so we've lost a little bit here. 45% of the time, we tend to fall, plus or minus, let's call it, the move is now 4% that we're looking at. Now what happens if we increase this from, say, 15 to 30? Does adding more time give us any additional benefit here? Now more time here, you can see, increases the probabilities that price tends to rise. About 75% now, up from that 60 that we've been looking at. However, the thing that did change is we can see anytime we do fall, that average fall is much greater than the average gain. 5.5 on the gain, 9 on the downside. So that's something else that we need to be aware of is while price does tend to rise 30 days after earnings, the times when it doesn't does hurt a little bit more than the times when it does go in your favor. So now the question is, how do we use all of this information to make sense of the charts of Edwards Lifesciences? And how do we use earnings as a catalyst to try and participate in this move? Now for me, everything here in this trade centers around that weekly time frame trend switch from red to green. This is the chart I'm looking at. So the market pulse here is the one that I would love to enter at, which is 83.06. So perhaps earnings gives us enough volatility to get that 83.06, and then we can use the daily time frame chart to either have some sort of confirmation signal, maybe something as simple as a momentum cross for those of you who like to wait, or if you don't like to wait, you can use something like the edge signals or even a simple touch of the market pulse as your means of buying a pullback in what should be this overall trend continuing. Keep in mind this idea is stemming from that weekly time frame chart where we did talk about a few places we expect to see resistance, and it's in that resistance that we're looking for a pullback to take place. One last thing I'll add for those of you that are options traders, the 26 days to expiration, obviously a little too close for comfort, but if we expand this out to 54 days, you can see some open interest here, which gives you some levels where price may tend to act as a magnet gravitating towards, and we can see some relatively high open interest here with 3 different contracts at greater than 3,000 plus with their open interest. So hopefully in this video, you have not only a good trade idea inside of Edwards Lifesciences, you know what we're looking for in terms of earnings catalysts. We can also use something like the Smarter Earnings Indicator to understand how to trade the actual day of earnings inside of Edwards Lifesciences. And you can then piece that together with what tends to happen on earnings. Do we have a beat, a miss? Is it a nothing? And use that to make sense of this information. Take care, everyone. Good luck trading, and I'll see you in the next update.